Good morning. Wednesday, April 29th. Time to do our read aloud, the Runaway Racehorse. Yesterday, at the end of the chapter 9, Josh says he has a way to prove that the horse that Sunny rode is not Whirlaway. And I remember Lily saying, I know. Sugar cubes. If the horse eats the sugar cubes, they will know it's not Whirlaway because Whirlaway doesn't like sugar cubes. Chapter 10. You're a genius, Ruth Rose said. I know, Josh said. Dink glanced around the empty barn. Now all we have to do is wait for Sunny to get back. Ruth Rose stuffed the pictures back into her pocket. Well, I, for one, am not waiting around, she said. Come on, let's go check out Mr. Bunk's place again. What are we going to do when we get there? Josh asked as they hurried out Forest's driveway. Look for Whirlaway, Ruth Rose said. Do you still have those sugar cubes? Josh patted his pocket. Yep. The kids cut behind Forest's barn and headed for the logging road. A few minutes later, they reached Mr. Bunk's house and barn. I don't see that dog anywhere, Josh whispered. And I don't see Mr. Bunk's truck, Dink said. Let's check out the barn, Ruth Rose said. The kids slipped into the barn. It was quiet and dim, with a little light coming through the dusty windows. Biscuit's gone, Dink said, stopping in front of her empty stall. Where do you think she is? As if in answer, they heard a horse whinnying. Come on, Dink said, heading outside. Behind the barn was an open field with a path leading through a tall weeds. The kids followed the trail and entered a stand of trees. As they reached the far side of the trees, the kids stopped and stared. They were in a clearing in front of a log shed. A horse trailer was partly hidden behind the low building. Kids pulled open the wide shed door and peeked inside. Dink wrinkled his nose at the sharp manure smell. Half of the shed was fenced off with boards. Behind the fence was Biscuit, staring at the newcomers. In a separate stall next to Biscuit was another horse, wearing a halter. The dark horse looked just like Whirlaway, except that there was no white diamond on this horse's shiny head. It's the horse who won, Josh breathed. Is it Whirlaway? Dink whispered. Josh unwrapped a sugar cube, walked over to the fence, and held out his hand. The dark horse stepped closer for a sniff. Then he snorted and shook his head. He won't take it, Josh exclaimed. He reached out and carefully touched the horse's forehead. When he brought his hand away, his fingers were smeared with something black. That could be the shoe polish that they put over top of the white mark. Dink took a towel from a nail on the wall. Holding the horse's halter with one hand, he wiped his forehead. More black came off, revealing part of a white diamond shape. Dink felt goosebumps crawl up his back. Sunny did switch the horses, he said. This is Whirlaway, Ruth Rose said. She opened her envelope of pictures. She found the one of Sunny and the horse in Barn E and held it up next to Whirlaway. The horse back at Forrest's place is a double, she said. We have to tell Forrest, Josh said. Tell him what? A voice said. The kids whirled around in the shed doorway. There stood Mr. Bunks and Buster the dog. Mr. Bunks was still wearing the clothes he had worn in the winter circle, including the silver belt buckle. Sit, dog, Mr. Bunks said to Buster. The dog sat at his master's side. A low growl came from deep in his throat. He doesn't look very happy. Here's a picture. The kids. Oh, there is Whirlaway right here. The dog doesn't look too inviting, and Mr. Bunks. What's going to happen? So you figured it out, Mr. Bunks said. He nodded at the towel in Dink's hand. Even my boot polish trick. His boot polish trick, Dink thought. Suddenly, Dink realized the truth. Sonny had not been in on this the whole time. So, Sonny had not been the one who put on the polish on Whirlaway. It was Mr. Bunks, and it had been Mr. Bunks' belt buckle that made the mark in the mud on the horse they washed. It wasn't Sonny who had stole Whirlaway. She thought she was riding Whirlaway in the race. Mr. Bunks had done it all along. That Mr. Bunks. Dink glanced around the dim shed, looking for another way out. The windows were closed and too high. Now, if you'll please pass me those pictures, Mr. Bunks said, holding out his hand. The man smiled, but it wasn't the friendly smile he had had on yesterday. Dink took the photos from Ruth Rose and handed them to Mr. Bunks. We didn't need the pictures, Dink said. We know this is Whirlaway, and we know you stole him, Mr. Evans. You stole him from Mr. Evans, Mr. Bunks. Mr. Bunks just laughed. Whirlaway? I don't know what you are talking about, he said. I bought this horse. Can I help if it just happens to look like Whirlaway? Can I help it if it just happens to run like it in the wind? He slipped the photos inside his shirt. No one will ever prove I stole this horse from Forrest. We won't have to prove anything, Tinker, a voice said. Not with all these witnesses. Forrest, Uncle Warren, and Sonny walked into the shed. So, Forrest, Sonny, and Uncle Warren heard all of this that was going on. Mr. Bunk looks a little bit worried. He's like, oh my gosh. An hour later, everyone sat around Forrest's picnic table eating burgers. How did you guys know where we were? Dink asked. I was coming back just as you were leaving, Sonny said. You had such determined looks on your face, I decided to tell Forrest. And we reached the shed in time to hear everything, Forrest said. Mr. Bunks is going to jail. Oh, I can't get it to go. Oh, got to come this way. There they are around the picnic table. And I think we'll finish today. And then if you want to take the AR test, you can. Did Mr. Bunks actually think he could get away with this? Ruth Rose said. Forrest nodded. Well, he was lucky to find Whirlaway's double. Even the white-faced diamonds are the same, he said. I was fooled, but Sonny noticed a difference. Whirlaway is usually so friendly, Sonny said. I got suspicious when the lookalike acted like he didn't even know me. On the way home from Saratoga, I stopped at the vet's. He took a blood sample. That'll prove the horse I rode isn't Whirlaway. That horse is called Dancer, Forrest said. Bunks switched names, too. Turns out the woman he bought Dancer from didn't treat her horse very well. That's why he was afraid of Sonny. Her voice reminded him of his abusive owner. That says a lot why he would jerk away and look back. He was nervous. He thought maybe he was getting into trouble. What will happen to Dancer and Biscuit when Mr. Bunks goes to jail? Ruth Rose asked. Forrest winked. I've arranged to buy them, he said. From now on, Whirlaway won't have to run away to visit his mother. That's awesome, Josh said. He picked up his hamburger, took a big bite, as he did, and a glob of ketchup squirted out and landed on his clean white t-shirt. He's quite the messy eater, and there's Josh eating his burger. So Forrest is going to buy Dancer and Biscuit. So now he's going to have 3 horses. Okay, and crazy thing is, Sonny kind of had an inkling that that the Whirlaway imposter horse was not him, because he was like afraid. He was afraid of her. Horses, when they're around their owners that treat them nice, usually aren't afraid. They'll love up and they trust. This horse didn't trust. So Sonny knew something was up. And Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose, they are some brilliant kids. They solved the mystery. Way to go, you 3. Okay, I'm going to write down the book number, and well, you can see the number right here, 65673. That is our AR test number, 65673. That's the AR test number for the Runaway Racehorse. I'll hold it up again, 65673. If you're unsure, you can go back to the videos and listen again. All the read alouds are taped. I hope you enjoyed today's read aloud. Thanks. See you tomorrow.